Hey everybody, it's James Vagley here. Welcome to another episode of the MBA podcast. And we have a very interesting case study for you today. That's episode 179. Before we get into it, Ash, the man in the red corner, the man in black, I'm in black. Who can tell we look the same? How are you today, my friend?
This is our official uniform, isn't it? Black. I'm really good, James, and I can't wait to find out who this mystery person is.
It is a big mystery. We've left everybody hanging, but look, the title of this one is How Ash Built National Partnerships and Wrote Over 1,000 Loans. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know any other Ashes. So it's you.
Yeah, sorry for feigning a little bit of mystery, listeners, but yes, the mystery case study is me. Guilty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, guilty. And look, for those of you that have been, or maybe I was going to say hiding under a rock, maybe you're just new in the industry and you haven't heard our podcast before. This is the whiz bang first one you've stumbled upon and you don't know who I am or who Ash is. Well, one of the things Ash did among many, many, many things over 30, almost 40, I think, probably a year career in the mortgage industry was building and exiting multiple mortgage businesses. And along the way, built some pretty substantial national level partnerships. So we want to talk about that a little bit today. But also on a personal level, or personally wrote thousands of loans. And so there's two different aspects we want to talk about with this case study. So listeners, we've been talking about referrals and partnerships all month. And I thought it'd be a great idea to talk to the partnerships guru himself and try and extract some of the things that he did. And we're going to go into those two aspects. So let's hit first one, Ash, like 1,000 loans in X amount of time. Let's talk about that one first. How'd you write all those loans? What was the context before we get into the national partnerships one?
Yeah, look, I guess in some ways I was fortunate when I entered the mortgage broking aspect of industry. Like you said, I've been going for 40 years since 1983 in the mortgage and finance industry, but entering the mortgage broking self-employed industry in the mid-90s, I came from a background of very, very strong training and indoctrination around value over price, service and value over price. So I hit the mortgage industry with that mindset. There's a lot of things I didn't know, a lot of things I wasn't good at, but one thing that I did have indoctrinated into me was winning business on things other than price. Seems obvious, right? But so taking that forward into your question, okay, and I guess the first year or two, I did stumble around a bit. I did okay. I did quite well, just through effort and a little bit of competency. But the writing of the 1,000 loans, I guess, came after a period of realizing that I couldn't build a business based on purely, or I couldn't build some sustainability of life and business on never ceasing, always expanding effort. So I came to the conclusion that I needed to settle a certain amount of loans from a certain amount of effort per month. And then I thought, well, okay, where are these clients that are buying houses that need loans? Well, they're with real estate agents. And I'd been through the rigmarole. We've spoken about this in other episodes about trying to be all things to everybody and approaching a lot of people and asking for business and, getting the cold shoulder and doing all sorts of things, right? But kept going through it. Then I wised up and figured out, for me to write a lot of loans, I wasn't building a team at this stage, right? I was an individual broker, and I did hire a part-time admin support person, also known as a secretary then, um, to help me with a bit of admin. But effectively, I was doing everything myself. So that came through one-on-one relationship building with a small group of agents. And I've spoken about my whole gold, silver, bronze approach. And I knew plenty of agents. I'd sent out plenty of letters. I would introduce myself to lots of people through various means. But in the end, it boiled down to pure numbers. Right? For me to settle 20 loans a month at a conversion rate of 2 in 3 from referral to settlement, well, you don't need to be a maths scholar to work out that, to settle 20 loans, I'd need, 26, 7, 8 referrals. In the end, I settled 25 loans a month from 32 referrals, right? So I got a pretty high conversion rate. So I just simply then go, okay, who has got the people I want to speak to? That's real estate agents. What do they value? Do they value commission share? If they want that, I'm out. And I got hit with that many times. Oh, your competitors are paying revenue share. Bank X is giving us a spotter's fee per deal. What are you going to do? And I was like, well, I don't make enough to give you any for starters, right? And I'm not claiming any genius at that stage, James. I couldn't afford to. So I just said, oh, well, I can't afford to do that. I'm out. Right. So by default or design, one way or another, I ended up with 4 agents who I just worked out I needed to treat like gold, that gave me all the referrals. Between them, they gave me 8 a week on average, of which I converted to 20 to 25 loans. And I just did that for 4 years. A couple of agents came and went, and I did get the occasional referral from other people. But, referrals from people is a derivation of the amount of time, energy, and effort you put into maintaining the relationship. And you just can't. I'm a big believer in finance as an individual broker. You can't maintain intimate, high quality relationships with more than 4 or 5 people, right? You're just kidding yourself if you can spread yourself around at a high level with a huge group of people. So I very quickly ended up, the rest just became people that I'd occasionally interact with at golf days, or I'd send a newsletter to, or every now and again I'd send them a Christmas card or whatever the case may be. So I still maintained a relationship. But then I just went for 4 years, just writing loans, like it was simple metronomic economics. There's a hashtag for you.
Yeah.
I just did the same thing, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out, made good money for those 3 or 4 years until, my career took a new turn, and I wanted to build a business beyond my own ability to write loans. But for those
Yep.
4 years, I wrote a lot of loans and did really well.
Yeah, that's a fair few, especially doing it pretty much solo. So I'm sure our listeners would have dozens of questions, but the key one that comes up for me is that you said, look, 32 referrals from 4 or 5 people or whatever it was. Well, the question would be how. So how did you ensure that every week they were sending you a couple of referrals each? What were some of the key things you did? I mean, it sounds like they were in your gold batch. Listeners, if you haven't listened a few weeks ago, listen to that episode where Ash talked about the gold, silver, and bronze. But so these were your gold. Like, what did you do to these, or with these gold partners that got such consistent lead flow? What's some of the things?
Okay. Well, there's a few things. Okay, so the first thing is to put my hand up and say, I'm an introvert and I'm a bit of a nerd. Listeners, sorry to destroy your impression of me as a gregarious extrovert. I'm actually a very quiet introvert, right? Particularly when it comes to meeting new people. So one of the things that became clear to me was I'm no good, and it's no point chasing the high-flying agents that everyone else was chasing. I ended up chasing the middle of the road agent who was in the corner that not many other people spoke to or took notice of. So the first thing to be clear is you don't need the high flyers. If you're a high flyer, great, maybe that suits you. But most brokers, we're just everyday people that want to be good at what we do and want to serve our audience well. So that was me. So the agents that I got all my referrals from weren't the high flyers. They were okay. They weren't terrible. They weren't super successful. So that was my first tip to everybody is don't target the people everyone's targeting. Target the people that not many people are targeting. And they're the everyday agents who are making a living, but not necessarily killing it.
And
Right?
that's awesome. Were they independent in large firms, like your big branded firms? Did it matter?
Bit of both. Yeah, it didn't matter. One of my number one referrers for a couple of years worked in a Ray White office, right? Who had back then they had their own finance firm, which they still do, but obviously it's long since evolved into loan market. But back then it was Ray White Financial Services, and they'd tell their sales manager that they were referring their clients to Ray White Financial Services, but then they'd refer them all to me. right? Because I was Johnny on the spot. I was there. You know,
Well,
the so-called broker they were meant to deal with was off trying to deal with everybody else.
well, that's the next bit is the why. That's probably a great leverage segue into, you know, why were they referring to you, and what else did you do? It sounds like, yeah, you said I was there when most brokers are absent. Let's keep going on that.
It's a good start, James, right? I, you know me, I've got a little book of sayings, right? And one of them is, I would put them on my drop everything and take their call list. And I would use language like that. I literally said, listen, I don't care where I am, what I'm doing. If you support me and I see your name on my phone, I'm taking the call, right? And I delivered on that promise, right? If I saw that agent's name, I would take the call. I'd interrupt what I was doing, say, excuse me, I have to take this. And I'd say, hello, Damien, it's Ashley. And he'd say, Ashley, I've got someone in my office right now. Can you speak to them? And I'd say, yes, put them on. And I would win the business in 2 minutes and then say, I'll follow you up later. So if you're going to commit yourself to doing that, you've got to deliver, right? They didn't used to ring me much on weekends. I rarely got calls after hours. It was mostly during the day when they were talking to their clients, right? They don't refer them to you at 8 o'clock at night. They refer them to you during the day. I wanted them referring me clients while they were talking to them, not at some point later, because the opportunity's gone. So that's another tip I would give you is I want the referrals while you're talking to them.
Did you
Right?
train them to do this?
Yes,
Is
I
this what?
told them.
Yeah.
I said, the best time to refer clients is when you ask them about finance. Right? I'm interested in a property. I want to make an offer. I've made an offer. I want to go to an auction. Any of those things that's a sign of intent from a prospective buyer. That's the point I said. Ask them if they've got finance approved. No matter what they tell you, I want you to say, I'll just give my broker Ash a call and get him to speak to you just to make sure that everything's fine. Now, anybody that's been trained by me, those words will sound very familiar, right? And anyone that's gone to any of our programs on this, that will sound familiar. We still teach that base relationship skill today upon which everything is founded. Is your job is to tell the client, I'm going to give them a call or to put them on the phone right now. That's all I want from you. I made it so simple, James. That's the next thing. Make it really, really simple and no extra work. The moment it's extra work, they won't do it. So make it really simple. All you got to do is say to the buyer, my broker, Ash, I'm going to call him now. He will always take my call. A little bit of ego pampering there, perhaps. He will always take my call. Or my broker, Ash, I'll get him to give you a call in the next 2 hours. Right. And I would always deliver on that. That was it. Now, obviously, within that, probably the next thing was if I felt I needed a little bit of guidance on overcoming objections. That's another thing for agents. They will never do anything they feel is risking a listing or a buyer's intent on a property. So they will refrain from pushing them to a broker if they think it's risking anything. All right. So I said, listen, the easiest thing to do if they say they've already got finance approved or they're a cash buyer or they've already spoken to a broker is just to say, that's fine. I really appreciate that you've done that. But, Ash has looked after a lot of my clients and a lot of them have benefited from a second opinion. I'll get Ash to give you a call to give you a free second opinion. Is that okay? The clients are always, yeah, that's fine, whatever. Right? Once they're on the phone to me, then it's up to me. That's my job. It's not the agent's job to convince them to deal with me. That's my job. So that's it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then they're in my gold category. Once they deliver, they're in the gold category and then they get all the love. I used to take them out for lunch once a month. And the interesting thing was, listeners, I used to take all 4 of them out together. Not even individually. We used to go together and have our chicken palmy at the local club or pub and talk, a bit of shite about life and, business in general. They loved it. I loved it. It cost me $100 to buy them lunch back then, once a month. Money well spent, considering I made, 10 or 15 grand a month from the relationships. So spending $100 a month, that's stuck the relationships like glue. right? Didn't have to share revenue, didn't have to take them out all the time, didn't have to do any of that. I just had to be clear on what it was I was offering and make sure I delivered. And if they kept delivering to me, I kept delivering to them. If they stopped delivering to me, I'd ask them, why aren't you delivering? And I'd find someone else.
Hmm.
Occasionally they'd leave the industry. And this is why, listeners and James, and I've said this many times, I stopped writing loans at one point. And even after I'd sold that business, started another business and sold that, and wasn't even in the industry for a couple of years because I had a hiatus, I still got referrals 6 years later from those
Yep.
agents saying, I know you're not a broker anymore, but I still want you to speak to this customer. And I'm like, okay.
Yep. Can't turn it
So,
off.
well, you can't turn it off. Once they trust you and you're an extension of their service, you know, you've got them for life, right? So I became an extension of their service. It was baked into their day-to-day service. It was nothing extra. It was just part of what they did.
So good.
Who's got a chance of breaking that relationship? The only one who can break that is me if I stuff it up.
Yep. Yeah, I love that. There's such power in simplicity. And I guess what you just explained in the last 5 minutes sounds relatively simple, but there is complexity in getting it right. We've extracted that and popped that into resources and coaching and training so brokers can replicate that of what we do with our clients. So, but yeah, focusing on the fundamentals in simple, what's going to get the results is incredibly valuable. Now, I wanted to move on to the second half for a few minutes in terms of, okay, so you wrote a lot of loans without sharing commissions with just a handful of real estate agent partners over a few years, and that's how you did it. Let's move into the big fish realm. And when you started playing with national level partnerships, this is when you were building businesses in the mortgage sphere. Very different kettle of fish, probably different offers, different approaches. Let's sort of do a few minute case study on building national level partnerships. Now, there's probably the 1% of 1% that should go after this, and only when they built a scalable business model. But when they're ready, what are some of the things they might want to think about?
All right, let's go. So, okay. So to start at the start with this, which seems a fairly obvious place to start. This was driven by a couple of things, right? So, as I said earlier, I wanted to evolve my career to a point where I could make a living, good living, without having to write loans. Even though I'd enjoyed it and done well, I could see the writing on the wall for various reasons it was unsustainable for me personally at that time. Plus, I knew that there was no value in a business that only existed if I could show up and write loans. So I thought, well, what am I creating here? An income or a business? So I wanted to shift to a business. So, there's a few things: building system, teams, process. But ultimately, then it came down to, okay, I want a network of brokers. So I've got a network of brokers. I need to feed them. How do I feed them? I need relationships that are big enough, that have enough potential, that can generate enough leads to distribute to those brokers, that's viable for them collectively, viable for me as a business owner, but of course, make very good sense for the joint venture partner. So that's where it began for me, right? I guess I had made the mistake myself once or twice about chasing relationships beyond my capability. I don't know if anyone resonates with that. It's very easy to get drawn into that, chasing relationships that have got huge potential, but then you look at your capability to deliver on them and it's like, there's you plus one staff member, and you're talking to a relationship that could deliver you 100 referrals a week or a month. What are you doing? No chance. So all of these things led me down the path, and then I thought, well, where do I like to play? Well, there's sport. I also had an interest in charity, particularly cancer research, and a couple of other areas as well, real estate networks. Another one was a lead developer or a lead provider in another vertical. All of them shared common thread. They had a large volume of database and or throughput of clients who were the likely audience for a mortgage, i.e. they weren't 18 and they weren't 78, right? They were in that, most of their clients were in that middle ground. So it ticked that box. Number two, all of them had a common thread of something that I was passionate about and interested in. I don't believe, or I certainly believe it's very difficult to build and sustain big joint venture relationships if you're doing it purely for commercial reasons. I think you need to have a very strong why, if you like, as to why you're doing it, right? Right. So for me, you know, the why became raising money for research in an area that I'd been personally affected by. When it came to a major sporting group, there was a major sporting group that I had a connection to that was in some financial turmoil and needed help. So those are the sorts of things that I think are a good starting point, James. Like if you want to build a big partnership and you've got the financial clout, the teamwork, and importantly, you as the business owner are not on the tools, or if you're on the tools, it's only in a limited capacity, so that if you do chase these relationships, you can see them through. You're not going to, you're not winning them and then, you know, going back to your day job of writing loans. Right? So those things all need to be in place, right? I don't actually think it's that hard to approach a big opportunity and get to first base. I think most people could, you know, get to first base with a big national partnership, but very few can get to second or third base because they get filtered out very, very quickly. And the ones that win them, including me back then, had the intent, the connection, the clout, and the team and the network to deliver on the promise.
Yep, there's a fair bit to it. I know we unpacked it in our membership site a while back in terms of how you did this specifically. So if anyone wants the very specifics, that's inside our coaching programs. Can you share a little bit very quickly about the scale and challenges? Just because you know, the challenge of going in and working with such a large organization, it's no doubt slow moving. There's multiple layers. There's, you know, what would be valuable might just be a quick top three things to have already achieved in your business to know you might be ready to tackle it, and or the top three things that you need to know before even thinking about taking on a challenge like that. And then we can wrap up.
Yep, definitely. Okay, so one of them is definitely you must have a financial and business structure that you are confident is going to keep you liberated from the urgency to write loans to make a living. This is almost impossible to execute if you're still operating, as I've said colloquially in the past, pulling on the oars of your business. This needs you on the bow of the business. That's number one. You must be able to do that, and you must be able to see it through over a period of months, which leads me to the second thing. These things are always long-term plays, right? So you need to be prepared to commit to a year to win these relationships and prove them and get through pilot phases and contracts and negotiations and boards. Most of the organizations that are big enough that we're referring to, they're quite bureaucratic. They're quite slow moving. They're death by committees. You've got lots of egos and little kingdoms inside these organizations that you don't know about when you go in, right? You think you go in with this amazing offer, then you hit all this bureaucracy and blockages that you didn't know that were there. So if you haven't got a long-term strategic mindset, you'll get flushed out very quickly. And that's the second thing. The third thing is, without exception, I had an internal champion at each of these organizations. What do I mean by that? I had an inside person, right? Now, when I say an inside person, I don't mean the owner. I just mean someone who could agitate a little bit in my support inside the organization. Didn't have to be a board member. It just needed to be someone who had the ear at some level of the decision makers that could agitate in my direction. All right. So whether it's an AFL club, which I've done once or twice, a national charity, or a state group of real estate agents, or other lead generation organisations that operate at a national level with, there's one of the ones we did based out of Sydney had 300 staff and turned over 300,000 leads a year, right? And wanted to build a mortgage under a joint venture. So all of them, though, I didn't just look them up in the phone book and think that's a good idea. I had someone who I knew who pointed me in that direction. Now, I would argue too, James, just to add to that, I'm just an ordinary guy, right? I would say all of you listening to this would have somebody, a client, a connection, a relative, a friend of a friend, who has a connection into a big organisation that can stick a toe inside the door for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's got someone who can do that for them. So that's part of it as well, right? That can give you a bit of the lay of the land of what's going on inside that organisation. Because I can tell you, having done this a few times, James, is the perception from the outside is different to the inside. The inside, there's often turmoil, there's argument, there's dissent, right? There's all sorts of things going on, and there's egos, right? Big egos, right? That you've got to work your way around. And then they look at it and go, well, okay, we've got what you want. We want the lion's share of the money. So you've got all of that to deal with, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as you said, there's a playbook, and with certain members that we work with, this makes good sense, and we work closely to help design and execute these things. But just be aware that these opportunities are for more mature businesses who have these criteria in place. And before I sign off on that, I'll probably add the fourth one, which is you've got to have a team behind you. I think this is part 1B, maybe, James, is you've got to be non-loan writing as much as you can be, which by direct definition means you've got a team of people in your business that are already delivering outstanding results at scale for other people. You can't go into this saying, I'm going to pull it together and you're going to be my guinea pig. Look, these organizations, none of them want to be the guinea pig. They all want to know, who have you done this for before?
Yep.
Right? They all do. And you're like, well, no one. You're the first. Well, they don't want to hear that. So you've got to be able to speak to your business credibility from another direction, which is, here's my team, here's my results, here's some testimonials. And the natural extension of that now is I'm free to do this relationship right.
Yep, there's a lot to it, and I think you've laid it out at a high level very well in just a handful of minutes to something that takes time. And I think if we were to sort of close off this episode, there's been the two parts today. Like there's that personal writing loans, getting there in the trenches, working with partners, focusing on the basics to get them to send leads consistently and predictably. If that's what you want, listeners, again, jump over to our website, book in a chat with our team. Let's talk about how we can get you into Accelerate to start forging those partnerships and doubling and tripling your volume quickly. It's probably the top 1% really of the industry, Ash. Like, even if you're doing quite well and maybe you're already writing good numbers, 50, 100 mil a year, 150, you're probably still not in a position to consider this. Like, you're at the front of the boat. You've got time. You don't need the money, but you've got big ambitions, and you want to work with a mentor that's done it. Same deal. Go to our website, book in for a chat. Let's get you under Ash's wing in terms of putting these sorts of things together, because of what they can go wrong, and you don't want to start without knowing the lay of the land. So, like with anything, doesn't matter where you're at in business, you're here, you want to go there, don't figure it all out. Come and learn from us, and we'll tell you how to not make mistakes and do it faster. So, Ash, is there any final words as we close out this case study on yourself and I guess close out this month that we've talked about key partnerships and referrals and all things partnerships?
The last message, James, and you touched on it there for me, is it's a team effort, right? Don't try and go it alone, right? Even if it's just what you said, James, I want to double, triple my volume by forging my first few key partners. Come and get help from us, right? And for me, going to the next stage of my career, the big, ambitious, hairy goal, I had people around me. I had a team of people, mentors, partners, other people that we worked this out together, right? It's very hard to do, if not impossible, on your own. So team effort, get help.
Indeed. Thanks for sharing openly, Ash. Our case study for the month, listeners. We have a new topic rolling out in April. So we'll be talking about something different, and they'll all build and relate to each other. Hopefully you're enjoying these conversations and getting some nuggets that you can take away in your business. But again, we sound like a broken record. They're just nuggets. To actually get results and build a real business, you need focus, accountability, coaching, and come and join us in our programs, because that's where the big things happen. So, but until next week, stay well, work hard, work smart, have fun with it. And Ash, I'm looking forward to seeing you again next week. Listeners, I'll see you too.
See you back in the driver's seat next week, James.
Done deal. Bye, everybody.